2 weeks away from Major League Baseball's opening day. It's time to start talking about the rest of the AL Central. It is a crossover edition of Locked On Guardians and Locked On Twins. Stay tuned.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Locked On Guardians / Locked On Twins. If you're watching, you can see that we got Justin, myself, and then Brandon down there from Locked On Twins. We're going to have some fun today. It's a little bit of a free flowy episode, as I sometimes like to call them, because we, just let the conversation go. I do want to say thank you for making Locked On Guardians / Locked On Twins your first listen today and every day, wherever you get podcasts. And also to say, both these shows have your team covered every day. With that all said, I think one of my favorite factoids on the show this year, before I kick to Brandon, was the fact that Dylan Bundy led the Twins in starts a year ago. For a lot of Guardians fans, I've seen kind of debating, if Cleveland will have more or less wins than a year ago. I say between an unbalanced schedule and the Twins having just competent pitching, this should be a good competition, is my view this year.
You had to bring that up, didn't you?
It's one of those great random facts.
I think it was like 27 starts too, and it's like when you prepare yourself for players to get injured, and it's the guys who stay healthy that are your worst players. It's just the vibe that the Twins had last year, where it was like, oh, cool, Chris Archer stayed healthy, good for him. Don't get me wrong. Good for him. Dylan Bundy stayed healthy. We were talking off the air. The Twins have 2 free agents from last season out of either 14 or 15 who got big league deals this offseason. I don't mean to hijack your point or anything here, but Jeff, I want to know who are the 2 players who were free agents from the Twins last year who have gotten big league deals this offseason.
I know it's not Devin Smeltzer, because we had that discussion on the show. Like, where is he? Did he sign? And the next day he signed a minor league contract.
Oh, he's not even on this list either. But yeah, he's with the Marlins.
Yeah, he got a minor league deal because he was 6th on the team or 7th on the team and starts a year ago. He was really high, as well as Chris Archer we were talking about. So if I'm thinking about who was there, I'm trying to think who even left in free agency. There were some trades.
Well, and one of them's a really big deal. Let's just say. Don't overthink it.
The one who came back.
Oh, yeah. Oh, see, I wasn't going to count Correa because he's
so technically he counts back. One other free agent, and
it's not Sanchez because I don't believe he is signed anywhere, and it wouldn't be. Like I said, I don't know of Bundy or Archer getting deals, but I could have missed on those. And
the hint I gave was 1 year, $4 million, and it happened recently.
I didn't get it. I couldn't guess it. I already know who it is, but I could not guess it either. It was a zinger. We've talked about this guy on the show, Jeff.
I won't delay it any longer.
I don't know. Unless it's a reliever.
He's a Cub. I'll give you a hint. He's a Cub right now. That's the last hint. I don't want to belabor the point.
Unless it's somebody like, is Theo Bar still there? Is it?
It's Michael Fulmer.
Oh,
right.
He was a twin for 2 months.
I forgot he was a twin. I'll be honest. I forgot he was a twin. I would have never gotten it because I forgot he was a twin.
Other than that, Aaron Sanchez back on a minor league deal. Danny Coulomb back on a minor league deal. Minor league deals for Duffy, Sandy Leon, Billy Hamilton. But Joe Smith, Tyler Thornburg, Cody Stashak, Chris Archer, Dylan Bundy, Gary Sanchez, all still out there. That's a pretty good indication of why your 2022 Twins won 78 games.
Yeah, on top of guys who just weren't healthy all year either. Yeah. That's I feel like that's going to be the crux of the season. I mean, Cleveland had a lot of, I don't want to say luck health-wise, but I feel like they did not lose a lot of days to injury, probably less than most teams would have. Maybe being young is part of it. Like, I think we've talked about that.
And people leave the Jose Ramirez off of it. Like, yes, Jose Ramirez played all year, but he went from MVP to league average for most of the year due to injuries.
Second half.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty significant loss. Not, again, it doesn't compare with the Twins. I think anyone who followed the game knew the Twins were one of the most snake-bitten teams in baseball. But then again, and we'll have to see how it goes, because then again, the year before that, Cleveland might have been the one where they saw their entire rotation go down, and we had guys like the same. If Twins fans want a good outcome story for a similar situation, it is 100% the Guardians, because they had to rely on Sam Henches, who many of us didn't even want to keep, and luckily they did. The Minnesota boy who turned into a great reliever.
Yes.
JC Mejia, I don't think ended up pitching anywhere, also got suspended, but the Cleveland had to dig deep for pitching because they had so many injuries, and then they had health and they had some young guys step up, and maybe that's the blueprint for the Twins this year.
Well, and they did go out and hire a new trainer, which so luck is kind of an unfair word, but I think fortune for teams who stay healthy is probably the better word. You're fortunate to do that. But they did go out and get the trainer from Oakland. Oakland is one of the more healthy teams. And to your point, though, Oakland is also a team that runs young just because of their frugality. So chicken and egg scenario, but it certainly doesn't hurt to try something different. They're trying something different by not letting Byron Buxton play this spring, which seems interesting. The definition of insanity is to try the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. They're trying different things. They went and got a trainer from a team that didn't miss many games last year, and they are chock full of depth. They have never had this many veteran utility players on the team at the same time in my lifetime, which is a while. So it's a different vibe. It's an interesting vibe, but I'm curious to see where it ends up.
I was kind of hoping at some point this offseason, speaking of depth, that we'd see now I'm having a brain fart moment. I apologize. We'd see Max get Kepler. Couldn't think of his last name. Get traded, because I feel like, we were talking before air, some of the guys who killed the Guardians, and I didn't mention him, but it's like he's one of those guys that I will be happy when he leaves, because much like Elvis Andrus, who resigned with the White Sox, I feel like Kepler always steps up when he faces Cleveland.
There was a Royals outfielder probably like 15 or 18 years ago who did that to the Twins, and it was nobody remarkable. I want to say a right-handed hitting corner outfielder, just an average player. But it's so maddening, because you look at Max Kepler and he should be better than he is. He's a decent player. He's fine. But like when those guys kill you, it's like, if Joe Mauer at his peak, if you shut him down, but Max Kepler beats you, it's just like you just throw your hands up. You don't even know what else to even say. Mark Quinn was the Royal who killed the Twins, if I remember correctly. Big
prospect who just didn't get it all together.
Yeah, I think that was the guy. Don't go check the numbers, though.
Won't believe it.
I haven't ran that through research yet. So, the guys that just kill you. So I'm sure, you guys were probably eagerly anticipating a trade of Kep, and they keep adding outfielders and not subtracting. It got kind of crazy there for a bit.
No, you guys definitely. I'm wondering if that's going to be the way to beat the shift. Just not play a second baseman and play four outfielders. But I mean, there are so many teams that struggle without. I was kind of shocked when the Lopez deal happened and an outfielder, at least one of them, didn't go in that trade somehow.
Well,
with the Marlins needs,
because they did trade the other Guardians killer, Luis Ariz. He killed the Guardians too.
Yeah, he was a very special player, a very special human, and I still think the Twins did well in the deal, though, especially getting Salas, the prospect.
Yes,
agreed. But that was a curious one. That one really split fans up. They were, up in arms. I don't want to call them the casual fans, but the ones who have that loyalty to the guys that have been there for a while. They don't want to see you trade him for anyone, let alone not knowing how good Pablo Lopez is, and then two prospects. There's still a group of fans who are convinced that prospects don't exist until they're issued a major league uniform. And again, I don't want to call them casual. They just don't consume the game at the same level that people like the professionals do, or people like us, people who really love the game. But yeah, it's going to be curious to see how different this looks without Ariz. But yeah, I thought Kepler, you add Joey Gallo, you've still got Trevor Larnach, you've still got Alex Kirilloff, and then you trade for Michael A. Taylor besides. And before you know it, there's 5-6 deep in guys who've had success at the major league level in some form or fashion. It's caught us all by surprise that Max Kepler's still here. Let's just say that.
Yeah, we were talking before we recorded, and this is not to just say anything bad about this guy, but all in an effort not to have Gilberto Celestino play as many games as he did a year ago. I think that was he had said he ran into a lot of outs and did some other stuff, just asked to do way too much, and then I think the Nick Gordon thing, I guess, went okay. Like he's been pretty good for the most part, but didn't clear a spot for Matt Wallner, but I guess you don't have to rely on guys like Gilberto Celestino. That was the whole point.
Yeah.
Not to single him out.
Nick Gordon and I have a feud going. He's had me blocked on Twitter for a couple of years. So now you know. No, I'm kidding. I never even said anything mean directly to him. I just said I didn't see it for him being a big league caliber everyday player. So I'm sure that Jeff there has had that happen to him too, where you try to be just logical about somebody and it blows up in your face. But
100%.
No, again, the way this team is structured too, with Gordon, Kyle Farmer, and Donovan Solano, that's pretty solid depth. I mean, nobody's going to make you forget about Ben Zobrist circa 2009, but they'll be protected if Alex Kirilloff's wrist is sketchy at first base, or Jose Miranda needs time with the shoulder to move over to first base from third. They'll at least have capable big league vets out there. And we haven't seen that a lot from the Twins. The Twins used to be, you'd have your starters, and then the next three guys up from the major league or the minor leagues are your bench. You got a fast guy, a defensive guy, and then maybe someone who will someday hit. This is a different approach, and I'm curious to see, if all this big league established help changes the narrative from last year.
We will continue this fantastic discussion, but first, let's talk about one of our fantastic sponsors. And our first one today are our friends over at FanDuel. Now, the official ad read says that they are the sports book, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. We got a press release we should let you know they're also the sports betting partner of MLB. So it's not just the NBA, it's baseball as well. And right now, you want to check it out for the no sweat first bet, up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything, from the money line to point scorers and threes drained. On Locked On Guardians, we always say bet the over on the Guardians. I don't know if Twins fans want to hear that or not. Sorry. But that is our big advice. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA and Major League Baseball.
What is the over-under for the Twins, by the way, on FanDuel? Are we aware?
Oh, you know what? I pulled the numbers for every team in the AL Central.
I think Cleveland was 86, but that's all I remember when I first looked. And
what I pulled from them was Fangraphs and Baseball Prospectus.
Okay.
Prospectus says 88, Fangraphs says 83. So an 86 would be pretty much smack dab in the middle if that's what FanDuel says.
So are you advising Twins fans to bet the over, Brandon, or under?
I mean, my heart says yes. My head says a fool and his money are quickly separated. I've been saying 92, and this is gonna probably make the eyes of some of your listeners pop out of their heads. But I really do like the depth the Twins have assembled. I watched firsthand how fast a season can unravel on you if Emilio Pagan and Tyler Thornburg and Jarrell Cotton and Juan Mena. I mean, I'll stop. I feel like I'm reading off.
Don't stop. We love Emilio Pagan in Cleveland.
Right.
That's true. Cleveland fans are surprised he was back.
Well, he's an adopted son for us.
I said if they won a World Series, he should have gotten a playoff share.
He should have gotten a playoff share.
But that's how fast a season can unravel. And I just think they're better insulated for that. The beginning of last year, they had relievers. Cody Stashak went down. Jorge Alcala went down. Danny Coulon went down. And none of those guys you look at and you're like, oh, they were going to be the linchpin of that bullpen. But at the time, Joan Duran was first-time big leaguer. Griffin Jacks was coming off being a crappy starter. Taylor Rogers had been traded. Tyler Duffy was on the way out. We didn't know if he was going to be completely washed like he was. I no disrespect to Tyler Duffy. I love Tyler Duffy, but it just wasn't there. That, to me, they're going to be in better shape because Alcala's coming back. I love Felipe Lopez. I'm so old.
I just watched that documentary.
Is that the infielder?
Again.
Yeah, the infielder from Cincinnati that I wanted.
I was
the Twins
talking
to
about
sign.
I was thinking about the basketball player.
Oh yeah,
also played for the Timberwolves, right? Yeah.
I believe briefly. Yeah, Jorge Lopez. Though I love the skill set. Duran is good. Jax is throwing 97, 98 at driveline. They're just in a better place now. I talked myself into Chris Archer and Dylan Bundy like a moron last year, and the reason why I did it was because they were going to be strict. This like 2 times through the order, which drove a lot of the average like the older fans just bananas because they want to see the starters go longer. And if Dylan Bundy gives up 2 runs in 5 innings, he should go out there again. I talked myself into that, but they didn't have the bullpen to back it up, and it blew up. I think they have not only a better rotation, but a better bullpen and 2 units that will better marry up against each other to at least be a decent pitching staff, if not a little better.
I'm glad you brought up pitching because Jeff and I did this experiment, I think, a few weeks ago about stacking up the pitching staff. So I'm going to read off the Guardian. I mean, I know you know the Guardians rotation, I'm sure, but let me read off and you tell me when I get to a pitcher on the Guardians staff where you would rather take a Twins starter rather than this Guardians pitcher. Shane Bieber. Are you taking anybody on the Twins staff over Shane Bieber?
No.
Tristan McKenzie?
Probably not. I think it stops there, though.
It does, and that was kind of my point was we've talked about, okay, the Guardians clearly have probably, like, I'll give maybe Lopez and McKenzie are maybe a push, depending on how Lopez does this year, if he can stay healthy. But after that, I feel like I would take everyone in the Twins. I would take Joe Ryan. I would take Tyler Mahle. I don't know if I would take Kenta Maeda over Aaron Savali. That's a push too. But I was just thinking, like, the Twins rotation, I think Jeff and I both agreed, is probably better when you stack it up 1 through 5, but the Guardians are better at the top, which I'm not really sure how that plays out throughout the season. So for the Guardians, they're going to have to get pitching prospects up to match that, I guess.
Yeah, the thing that I noted was that I feel like Cleveland has become that St. Louis Cardinals of the AL, where they're just constantly churning out very solid mid-rotation guys. Like, they'll have the Klubers and the Biebers, and they'll have guys that come through, but then it feels like there's a lot of like Jake Westbrooks too, where guys just come in, they're 2 to 4 starters. You know, there's Plesac, who's good for a while, Savali, who's good for a while. Do they stay good? Do they not? Doesn't matter. They got a few more guys coming through. The thing that I want to know, and I'm glad you brought it up because I hadn't really thought of it this way. A team built with starters at the top in a weak division, I think, is a better approach, because if you get through the division, you're lined up 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4 for starters in series. Whereas if you're Rocco Baldelli and everybody's rested, who's your number 1? I mean, maybe Pablo Lopez, like you get to the end of the season, maybe Pablo Lopez or Tyler Mahle took a step forward and puts themselves into like the number 1 spot unquestionably, like Bieber is for the Guardians or Dylan Cease for the White Sox. But if you don't have that, like, how do you pick who's going to be your starter in that game 1, and how are you not going to be second guessed if they lose? I think the way the playoffs were set up and the way divisional play was set up, it was good to be top heavy in your rotation. Now that you're playing more games against the Yankees of the world, the Red Sox of the world, I don't think it's going to change that much. But again, too, what I like is there's different approaches to get where you're going. You know, you can win 88 games with a ton of offense and no pitching, a ton of pitching, no offense, or somewhere in the middle. And the idea that you have to do what all the winning teams are doing to be good, like it falls so flat with me. So I love the idea that they're going to compete as completely differently built clubs. But I think there's parts of each of them that people sleep on because there's not that star power. You know, behind Jose Ramirez, the offense for Cleveland might not seem that great, but that's because you don't appreciate Steven Kwan and Andres Jimenez. You know, for the rotation, people aren't going to get excited about the Twins, but if they give you 100 and some odd quality starts throughout the course of the season, or a big jump from the year before, it's not going to knock people over because it's not going to be superstars doing it like Justin Verlander. So that's my long-winded way of saying it's going to be a really fun back and forth. And at this point, I'm actually kind of sad they don't have more games head to head, because I'll admit the tension was fun. The result was not last year. Let's just say that.
Yes.
That was. Go ahead, Jeff.
I was a quick thing before you throw to our next break. I wanted to take a moment and give Brandon some credit. He was right. I pulled up Mark Quinn's data. Highest OPS of any team with more than 10 games played was the Minnesota Twins, 933. You nailed that one. Next would have been the Angels. But yeah, he was 100% dead on a 333 batting average with 9 home runs. So you nailed that down. You knew your numbers, you knew your stats. And another thing that could be helpful if you know your numbers and know your stats is our newest sponsor is one of my favorites, and that's because Ultimate Pro Baseball GM is a program I bought before they were an advertiser. I bought it across the NBA, the NFL, and baseball. I keep hoping they'll make a hockey version someday. It's not super in-depth. It's not like if you've opened up OTP and you feel intimidated. It is a game you can have fun with. You can play around with. It's free to start off as well. You'll quickly probably fall in love with it and want to spend the $3 like I did. And it's fun. I'll sit there and say, I'm going to play for 5 minutes, and then my lunch break is over. And I've been playing again since they're back, and I'm up to like the 2036 season. And it's got a really addictive just approach to it, and I find it to be really fun. And like I said, I enjoyed it before they were even connected with us. So right now, if you are looking for a good sports simulation game on your phone, a fun sports simulation game, one that you don't even need Wi-Fi to play, you just download it and you can play. You definitely want to check out Ultimate GM. So Locked On Guardians, Locked On Twins listeners, get 100% free boost to your franchise when using the promo code Locked On in the game store. So make sure to check it out. That'll be something that is very helpful. Make sure your coaches are aligned. That's my number one hint. Whatever your head coach is, you want everyone to have that same thing, and then try to get your players aligned for that big boost. So use those training tokens to help your coaches. So download the game, visit probaseballgm.com, scan the code, or look it up in the app stores. That's probaseballgm.com, Ultimate Baseball GM. Start your dynasty today. And maybe we can set up eventually some kind of league with listeners for that as well. I know our listeners, we did a fantasy league and they loved it. So we can do that. Comment below if you want to do a league of this.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, we had a lot of good responses. We had 20 people. By the way, if you're listening and you are in the Locked On Guardians Fantasy Baseball League, 9 p.m. On March 25th is our fantasy draft. It's a 20-team league with Jeff and myself. I didn't think we'd get 20 people or 18 people interested, but a lot of people wanted to do it, and here we are. So I'm looking forward to that.
I got to also throw out here, one of the things that makes me conflicted with the Twins is before I got the job, I was a draft writer, and that was like my big thing, MLB draft. And one of my big sleepers was Jose Miranda. I was the only person I believe who had him in the top 50. He was not. A lot of people didn't even have him as the top Cuban player that year. I might not have either. That might have been the Delvin Perez year, if I'm being honest. But I think it was. But he was my number 2. But I had him in the second round value. I thought he was a great get by the Twins. And he had some ups and downs. He's a classic example of why you don't want to write someone off. But, I mean, he looked special last year. He looked like he could be an integral part of this Twins team going forward. And he's always hit the ball hard. He's always had a good approach at the plate. Position has always been the question as well. But,
yeah,
I mean, he looks like a find, especially if you were someone who maybe doesn't know the Twins very well.
Yeah, and I mean, the highlights or the headlines are going to go to Byron Buxton and Carlos Correa, good, bad, or otherwise. But they do have just so many of these younger guys where you're like, oh, if that clicks, that's an everyday big leaguer, maybe not an all-star, but a pretty nice player. Alex Kirilloff, Trevor Larnach, Jose Miranda, to me, are kind of all in that grouping. I think from a prospect standpoint, years ago, those would probably be like your Jorge Polanco, Max Kepler types, right? I mean, where you're not expecting them to become a superstar or anything, but it could be a nice little player. I want to dig back for a real old name, and maybe you'll appreciate this. But when I saw Miranda's path, it was like, struggle. Oh, kind of figure it out, and have better numbers than people thought. I thought like Yangervis Solarte did that in the Twin system for a while, and then they didn't add him to the 40. He dipped and signed elsewhere, and he was a pretty good big league player for a little while. But that Miranda was able to go to that next level above that, where you didn't give up on him just because he looked like he was okay but not great. He really turned a corner last year when they sent him to St. Paul. Now, it's a funny story though. He never got to St. Paul. It's not that funny. Royce Lewis messed up his knee and Miranda was back the next day. But if you separate those two stretches, the first stretch is like a 6-something, 5-something OPS. Like, just, you can see why they sent him out. They're like, you're a good player, you have no confidence. When he comes back, it's like an 850, 880, something like that. Like, it's an incredibly specific rift in his season. And, based on what we saw that second go-round, my bold prediction last week, I was doing a bold prediction segment for the Twins. He could be the best hitter on the team. Better than Buxton, better than Correa if everything comes together for him. I don't remember if I said best hitter or most home runs, but yes, I'm enthused about what he's capable of as a hitter. Defense, there's a few guys like that too. Edouard Julien's another one. Kirilov, don't know where he'll land. But in general, like, I know they've traded off a lot of prospects. Encarnacion Strand is killing it this spring. Spencer Steer got to the big leagues. I still like what they have in terms of like potential big league players near the top of their farm system. It's not long, deep with superstars, but I think they can fill some roles with the guys they have, and they did a good job with managing to keep some guys so that the farm's not completely wiped out after all the trades they've made.
I am, and I'm not eager to see Edouard Julien because I have a feeling he's going to be a good player, but I also have a feeling he is the type of guy that's going to kill the Guardians. Like, he reminds me a little bit of Luis Ariz and a little bit of Elvis Andrews, that type that's always killed the Guardians. But he's looked good so far in the World Baseball Classic too. My only contribution to the Jose Miranda talk is we have a lot of listeners who like pop culture and nerdy stuff crossovers. I know he is the cousin of Lin-Manuel Miranda, who wrote Hamilton. So that's my only contribution to that part of the conversation.
So my fun Cleveland tie is that I got to see, and I mean, I don't know if you guys talk about him in town anymore, Francisco Lindor, but I got to see him as a 16-year-old take infield on Team USA. They faced, they went on a barnstorming tour, and they faced the best amateur team in Minnesota. They beat them 6-0. I mean, it was like the best old men ball players in town, so in their 20s or whatever, and they just smoked them. But Francisco Lindor at 16 years old was the smoothest infielder taking infield I had ever seen in my life, and may still be to this point in my life. And I just knew that day, I was like, oh man, I'm going to be keeping a close eye on him. It was, Bubba Starling didn't do much. Lance McCullers has been solid, but I knew Francisco Lindor was going to be the guy to watch. You guys, I know you made a great trade, but you were blessed to get him for as long as you did, because man, what a player.
Still can't believe Seattle didn't. I mean, I thought for sure he might go there, because he went to this. He went out there and he was hitting bombs in that stadium as a 17-year-old kid.
Yep.
And then they took Danny Holtzen and made the classic mistake of drafting a player from Virginia.
Didn't they do back-to-back pitchers, or two pitchers in that era? Holtzen, and then they had one other guy who
Paxton.
No, Paxton was later.
It was Holtzen, and then another guy may not have been as highly regarded, but
in that draft class.
That's one of the best draft classes of all time.
You had Bauer and Archie Bradley go to the Arizona in the top 7 picks. And then the other team who took 2 pitchers in the first round was the Milwaukee Brewers with Tyler Youngman and Jed Bradley. They somehow missed on both, but I don't know who the other pitcher.
It's going to bother me, obviously.
Took, but yeah, Danny Holtzen, Locked On Guardians fans, listeners will know this. I tease Virginia. We have some listeners who are fans because up until last year, their 5th highest WAR of any baseball player in the history of that Virginia program was Brandon Geyer. I think he's now down to 6th. It's not been great for the University of Virginia.
Not what you want.
No.
Not what you want.
We did have one question coming from a listener, and they wanted to know what's going to happen to Royce Lewis now that Carlos Correa is back, and at some point, I assume Byron Buxton will play a game in center field, or maybe he'll play a game at some point in some fashion. But what happens to Royce Lewis now that Carlos Correa is back?
It's hard to say because whether his future was up in the air at short or not would have probably hinged on if they brought Carlos Correa back. And they didn't bring Correa back because they planned to have Lewis. They didn't have Lewis penciled in at short because they planned to have Correa not there. I mean, they drafted Brooks Lee, so they're keeping things fluid at shortstop as possible. But with that said, Lewis is now on a 2nd ACL. Pretty clearly has some kind of issue in the outfield as far as, I think it is in his mind that he could hit the wall again, which You never want to play outfield scared like that.
Yeah.
It's and then the fun thing about that, like the Twins, again, me being a draft nerd, they'd be my favorite draft of any team last year. And for a team that has graduated so many guys, it's a solid pipeline still there.
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting to watch these two teams plug it out over the next few years, because the Twins have another nice 6th overall pick this year to continue.
Yeah. And so with Lewis, I got sidetracked there for a second. Yeah. I think it's going to be third base. I think his athleticism, he'll still have enough athleticism and arm to play third. And I don't know if I see Brooks Lee at third as much as second in that case. But who knows? If Correa ends up moving someplace, then who's your shortstop? Is it Lee? Is it Lewis? Is it Austin Martin's obviously way off the radar now. But I think Lewis is still going to obviously be a key part of this team, and he should be healthy by midseason. But does that look like him at third, Miranda at first, Kirilloff in the outfield, Kepler traded? It's kind of a pendulum effect of how that's all going to work. And they also don't have an everyday DH, so they'll be swinging guys through there too. But I really like the idea that that Lewis can help them soon.
Yeah, the open DH concept is good, because that really helped Cleveland last year. Now, Cleveland ran out of bats to do it with, but it's a good concept to keep guys healthy, especially like Byron Buxton.
Yeah.
The other thing I saw today in The Athletic, I don't know if I shared with you, Jeff, but there was an article in The Athletic about...
Never any sharing. I'm kidding.
I don't share anything with Jeff. I try to keep it all from him and make him look bad as much as I can, like I do with the World Baseball Classic Minute, which I'm still going to do. I'm still going to do the World Baseball Classic Minute because the Dominican Republic's about to go home. But the article I saw in The Athletic today was that the Twins were making an emphasis of base running, taking the extra base, keeping heads up, all that kind of stuff. And I wonder, I'm like, okay, is this because they saw the Guardians do it last year and it worked really well for them and it changed their season with how they ran the bases? And this is the Twins like, okay, we need to get younger, more athletic, and we need to do this because, the best, I don't want to say the best in the division, but the team that won the division last year did it and they're going to probably do it again. Or is it's probably both the changes in the rules too.
Yeah. I mean, the curiosity too has always been like Byron Buxton. Should he steal bases? Should he not? Can he stay healthy stealing bases? Is he going to be in a spot in order where you don't want to give up outs? Granted, he's like 90-some%. But yeah, do you want him to get hurt stealing bases? It's just there's so many things that I don't know. I think the Twins are just kind of that sabermetric, like 2004, 2003 Oakland A's, where they're like, we're not giving up any outs on the bases if we can help it. Granted, they don't run the bases well, but like they're not stealing, hit and run, bunt, and that sort of thing. I'll be curious to see how much it changes. Max Kepler's a guy who should be affected at least somewhat by the change in shifts. Although if they do what they did to Joey Gallo the other day, maybe we don't see that big of a difference for guys, at least until they hit a couple balls down the left field side with some authority. But I think rather than change the way they play the game, they wanted to protect themselves against the way that they play the game not working, because you build a roster a certain way where you have Kyle Garlick as like a lefty masher. Well, that falls apart when you're not a very good team and your left-handed swinger gets hurt, and suddenly Kyle Garlick's playing every day against righties. His line suffers, and then that niche way that you built that roster didn't work. So I think they just kind of like took the pieces down and they're kind of building it back up a little different so that they're a little better protected the rest of the way here throughout the season. I don't think they're going to change that much. I don't think they're going to try to mimic anything that the Guardians do or did. But at the same time, I mean, they went out and revamped a lot of very important parts of a team, especially behind the plate. Christian Vasquez, I think, is a very shrewd signing. I think he's going to do a nice job for them. Along the same lines, I'm curious to see how Mike Zunino pans out, whether it's as a bridge to Bo Naylor or as a mentor. We'll see. But yeah, catching is kind of where it's at for me foundationally. If you have a good catcher, you can do a lot of things pitching wise that you can't if you're relying on a rookie who doesn't know the league or a journeyman who's just not very good. So I'll be curious to see how it all pans out. But I think the catching situations for these teams are both interesting in different respects.
Yeah, I was at the game last year where Gary Sanchez single-handedly handed the Guardians a game, and that spiral, because that was the 5-game series over the weekend and the end of the year, and that when kind of spiraled everything. And I was like, wow, Gary Sanchez should be Cleveland's new favorite catcher after that game. So I can see why he didn't come back. Yeah. And that's why Zunino is in Cleveland, because you're right. Catching, especially behind the plate defensively, is where it's at. And that's why Cleveland has always opted for that, that move.
Edges, even Sandy Alomar Jr. was that kind of player, if I remember correctly. So,
yeah, he was a better hitter early in his career before his knees abandoned him. But I don't know. I'm going to choose to say the Guardians were trendsetters. I don't know what about you, Jeff. I'll say that everybody else saw what they did. They saw the rule changes, and now everyone else is going to. I mean, the rule changes should make everybody run the bases better, or at least try to, because you take advantage of it.
I like the idea of more action, but I also think people confuse action with actual good baseball. Like the average fan getting excited about routine fly balls and grounders. Like, that's not good baseball, but the ball's in play. To me, that trade-off is not a one-for-one thing. If I can see strikeouts, line drives, and great defensive plays, to me, that's the most beautiful game. I don't need to see routine grounders to second base. That people think that's action. The people that go to one game a year, and that to me is, I'd rather see a strikeout than a slow roller to second.
I agree. Jeff, do I have time? Does anybody care if I do the World Baseball Classic update? Should I skip it for a day?
I say we skip it. Every day.
Man.
From now to the end of time.
Denied.
Wow. Well, I'm just going to tell you real quick then that Bo Naylor hit a home run for Team Canada, and they're going home anyway because they lost. Andre Smith had won at bat, he walked, and Cade Smith gave up a couple hits today for Team Canada. And
by the way, Josh Naylor is a total pest. Stephen Kwan, total pest. my baseball level of hatred for those guys and how much they came up clutch against the Twins last year, off the charts. Unbelievable.
Yeah, the White Sox sure do not like Josh Naylor either.
No, every time you do something good,
yeah.
I would say that it's that it was amazing that Eric Andre was that good at baseball.
That's a good. I don't think I've heard that one before. That's a pretty good one.
Yeah, it's okay. Not my best, not my worst.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that one before. But now I think about it, that does make a lot of sense. But the funny thing is, Bo looks nothing like him, or their brothers. You can tell their brothers they don't look alike, and the youngest brother, who the Guardians will inevitably draft, also is taller than both and doesn't look like either of them.
That was like Oswaldo and Orlando Arcia. You couldn't even tell they were related.
Yeah. Well, that's all I got. You guys got anything else before we get out of here?
I would say people should check out Locked On Twins, but I'm thinking that might fall on deaf ears to a large portion of your audience.
I think everybody should, especially with the season being 2 weeks away. I think everybody, it's good. We'll have Locked On crossovers and division roundtables as the season gets closer. So we'll have one of us and Brandon and the White Sox guys, the Twins guys, the Tigers guys, all in a roundtable to do a division preview. But we thought it was a good time, season 2 weeks away, and Brandon being back on the network, and just to kind of dig in on behind enemy lines a little bit.
No, it was great. I enjoyed it a lot.
This is the point where I hop. Oh, yes. This is the point where I hop in and I say, remember to rate and review both shows positively. But hey, they say there's no such thing as bad publicity. Subscribe, like, hit the little bell, all those fun things. And then the traditional way we end, this may get edited out when it goes to the Twin show, is go Guardians, go.
What I say is, if you like the show, tell the podcast provider. If you don't like the show, tell me, because then I can fix it. But yeah, 5 stars. Any platform people are listening or watching on, it helps a lot. So again, we thank you so much.
Yep. Have a great day, everyone.